outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our new, I would say not newish slot, but different slot for 2025. This is ours and Jen's last show of 2025. As I've been promoting all over my socials, I will be taking a back seat and I will be the subject of interview today. So I'm going to stop yapping and I'm going to hand it over to the wonderful Jen Hurst to take over and let everybody know what they're in store for today. So Jen, over to you.
Thank you, Michael. I don't know if it's true to say that you're taking a back seat. This is all about Michael today and his recent journey, well, maybe longer term journey and more recent experiences. So in this episode, we're focusing on a growing and often under-discussed group, which is educators who have received a neurodiversity diagnosis later in their careers. So for many teachers, a recent diagnosis, whether that's autism, ADHD, dyslexia, or another form of neurodivergence, can bring clarity, relief, and also new questions about identity, workload, and belonging in the profession. So we'll be thinking about what it means to re-understand yourself whilst continuing to support students and how schools can better recognise and value neurodivergent educators. So obviously my fantastic co-host Michael Wright is the focus of our conversation today. Michael is a Devon-based music educator and he's generously sharing his story this evening. We're going to talk to Michael about his journey to diagnosis, how it's reshaped his understanding of teaching and creativity, and what he wants other educators to know if they're on a similar path. So hopefully we'll have some helpful tips to take away by the end of this session. Okay, so what I'd like to do is open up. It's all on me today, so we're going to flip this over a little bit, open up with our first ad read, which is from our sponsor Hatchet Learning. So this show is brought to you in partnership with Hatchet Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit www.hatchetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles. And what I'm going to do now is get straight into the first question. So this will be almost like a bit of an interview with Michael. And if you can just tell us a little bit about your journey to receiving a diagnosis as an adult, that would be great.
Okay, thank you for that. The journey to receiving a diagnosis. Well, I think like many people, adults who have a diagnosis later on in their life and in their career, they've often had in the back of their mind that they could be. They have an inkling that I think I might be whatever the neurodiversity is. But like many, I kind of go, oh, I think I could be, but then I kind of carry on and, get on regardless of the thinking about taking a diagnosis test. And I would probably say I was aware of my differences of learning probably during conservatoire when I was doing my undergraduate. I would struggle more so than others with the basics of certain tasks, even though I'm a trained musician and I know how to read music and I know, the theory behind everything that I do. I still have massive issues in sight reading. So you put a score in front of me, even though I know the notes and I know the rhythms and I know everything about it, I struggle to read the notes. I rhythms are fine, but the notes are difficult. So I've always had that. But I just presumed that I started later on with learning music theory and reading. so I just presumed that was just the way it was. If I had started when I was 5, for example, I'd probably have a better time, because that's what everyone says. Oh, you should really study music when you're younger. But there was a few other instances where I struggled at school with reading. I struggled at school with my handwriting. I struggled with concentration. When not only did I find it difficult to read, I also found it difficult to pronounce words, and I also found it incredibly difficult to keep a sustained attention to anything I was doing. So again, I just put it down to the fact that, hey, that's just me. I'm not particularly academic. But fast forward in my career, I managed to almost with a sense of siege mentality, and I'll show them, claw my way through study academia and move on to study PGCE and do my master's. So I figured maybe I'm not academic. Maybe I am far from it. Maybe I am academic, but I just don't exhibit what I believe to be what an academic mindset is. So fast forward to my teaching career, everything's kind of fine. I have moments in my career where it's all fine and I'm on top of everything and everything's good. And then there are moments when it's a complete meltdown and, just being dysregulated on a more of a regularity. Again, I'm just putting it down to, hey, that's just the way it is. Maybe it's stress. Maybe I just can't focus on this particular thing because I'm stressed, or I've got something coming up. So it was only till this year that I tell you what it was. I went to a conference, and it was a brilliant workshop led by people who work up in York, and they work with SEN choirs. So they specifically go out and they teach choirs of SEN. And I went to one of a workshop, and I found it incredibly insightful, but also there was a penny dropping moment when I realized everything that they were describing about the kind of students that they teach really ring true for me. And I spoke to one of the ladies afterwards and said, that was amazing. I think I might be on the spectrum somewhere. I think I might have a neurodiversity. And she said, she said, well, I have it. And she mentioned she had ADHD. And I went, okay, is there anything I can do about it? And she put me in touch with a wonderful lady who does dyslexia screening tests and also screens for other neurodiversity traits. So I enlisted the help of this therapist. So we've run the test, and we did the dyslexia screening test, and it came back with definitely dyslexia and very much heavy, big red neon signs. You are massively dyslexic. And I'm like, oh, okay, wow. Okay, what about ADHD? She said, right, well, let's do another test. And we did another test for ADHD. She said, I can't formally diagnose you with this because I'm not educational psychologist, which you need, but I can make strong referrals, and I can make strong points to the fact that you most likely are ADHD inattentive rate. So then that's where it came to be. It's almost like I went, well, I'll try to see if I am, and then all of a sudden I get big news that I'm both ADHD and dyslexic. So and that's how it came to be.
So absolutely fascinating, and probably more than we have time to unpick in what you said. Even there, a couple of things that stood out to me was the mentality of I'll show them whilst you were studying. And I'm wondering, you don't have to respond now, but whether you knew what it was that you wanted to show them. I don't know if you know what it was that you wanted to show them, but just that concept of kind of like having to prove something, or having to prove something even to yourself, really interesting. I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit, what it was that you felt you needed to push through.
Thank you. I and it's a trait that I found out with people with neurodiversity, more specific, I think autism and ADHD. There's a syndrome which is basically, it's to do with sensitivity, but it's more to do with if someone gets offended by something, I say a normal person, but a regular person wouldn't. But
neurotypical.
For people who are neurotypical, it's like 10 times. So I have always had this sense that if I have any inkling that people think I'm stupid or slow or
Mm-hmm.
can't do it or underskilled, I go into like full on Michael Jordan, like I will show you, I will practice, I will, yeah.
All right, got you.
That's where it comes from, is this innate sense of proving people wrong when there's never really been the case. Yeah, I've had a couple of teachers at school say, yeah, Michael is a bit slow and he can't really read properly and his handwriting is ineligible at best, but nothing out of the ordinary in terms of someone telling me that I couldn't do something because I couldn't do it at the time. But I'd take things, criticism like that, way and above, and that's why I've been so determined in my career to do all these things, because I don't want to be labeled as what people think I am, and I almost don't want to go to type with my neurodiversity. I don't want to go, well, the reason why I didn't do this is because I'm dyslexic, so that makes sense. If anything, I would just work 4 times harder to try and make it happen. And 9 times out of 10 it does, but that's just the mode that I go into. I'm chilling out as I'm getting older and maturing, but I still have that just this drive to go, I will show you. And yeah, it's like a switch, it just goes on. But I've read it's also quite typical of people with neurodiversity
That's so interesting, absolutely fascinating. The first time I've ever heard of that as well. And I think that I'm so pleased for you that you're reaching a place where you can take your foot off the gas and feel that you can allow yourself to just chill out, as you say. But at the same time, and when I say chill out, I don't mean that I'm not really attaching anything negative to what you've said, but chill out in the respect of allow yourself to chill. Do you know what I mean? Allow yourself to relax a little, but at the same time, just thinking about, for anybody with a neurodiversity and who experiences that need, to show them the additional load that must be on that individual, constantly having to feel like they've got to work X amount of times harder. That would be very hard to manage and very hard to deal with and labour on a daily basis. However, having a diagnosis would go some way, I imagine, to helping an individual to understand why they even feel that need to push back. Another thing you mentioned that was of interest, there were a few of them, was the meltdown. And I'd love to know what you're referencing when you mention the meltdown. But before we go to that response, this is an opportune moment to bring a fantastic article in Music Teacher magazine. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention the magazine. I do apologise.
You've done it.
I've done it now, it's too late. A fantastic article that I saw, it was published yesterday, and you can Google search it. The headline is Supporting Autistic Music Teachers, and it's a fantastic article. And the reason I mention it is because there were, just from a research perspective, there's interesting things in there, but something that the author of the article, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mention their names, so I shan't say it now, but the author of the article mentioned, we do all the time, it's Aidan Marsden who authored the article, and he says in the article, he references that meltdown, and when I was reading it, I was thinking, I wonder what that meltdown is, and this is specifically for someone with autism, but can you explain what you meant, if you recall, when you mentioned right in your first answer about the meltdown?
Yeah, so it depends on what it is. So often I liken it to a hijack, if you will, a hijack of reality. So everything could be normal and going as is, tickety boo, everything's fine, and then normally an external stimuli comes in, and before you know it, you're not in normality anymore. You're in a sense of kind of fight or flight, and you're having to basically wrestle back your brain into becoming more back to being focused, back to being normal. It happens in real time, and it's normally a sensation. For me, it's normally a sensation first. I feel the sensation first, and then the mental side, the thoughts, come later, and then I'm having to basically wrestle myself into focusing on the here and now, whilst at the background, the house is burning down and everything's just going all, falling apart. So it's normally for me a kind of a tingling feeling around the kind of the head and the arms. So you kind of feel like the rush of blood going into everywhere. There's a heightened sense of breathing. So you kind of, your heart level is going. In some senses, the eyes start burning. So you kind of get a feeling of kind of a burning sensation behind the eyes. And then you become super aware of everything. So every single is just sounds 10 times louder. So whilst that's happening, the teacher face, you put it on, you smile, and from the outside, you're cool, you're calm, everything's fine. And then you're kind of wrestling back. And then as you're circling around the classroom, you probably take about 5 or 10 seconds just to kind of go over to a corner and pretend that you're trying to find something or fix something. You just take a big breath and you just kind of almost remind yourself of where you are. Then you carry on, you do the lesson. And then the most important thing during those meltdowns is you go, right, I need to keep the ship steady. I need to be portraying myself in the way that my students want me to. So, I'm internalizing all of this while at the same time I'm kind of almost going, right, I need to protect inside from everyone here. So I'm going to go in, it's all under control. Only when the lesson's over, then there's just kind of this adrenaline dump, and there's this kind of overwhelming sense of, the body just fatigue, tiredness. You just, the brain is gone at that point. You can't really think straight. You can't really read anyway. And it takes a while just to kind of really calm down and really get the sense of normality. And sometimes it could be an evening, and sometimes it could be a couple of days where I'm like, I'm still in that mindset. Or I can't get to sleep because I'm just ruminating about something, and it's just over and over and over. And the minute I just start I think I forget about it, I remember it again, and then my heart rate goes up again. So it's a physical sensation, if anything, that happens when I'm dysregulated.
So can I ask?
Yeah.
Can that happen more than one time in a single day?
Oh yeah, it happens multiple times, depending on how stressful it is. Depending on how stressful it happens.
Okay.
But the weird thing is, but this is the thing that I was reading up about people with ADHD, is we can get flustered over the tiniest of things, or if we're working on something, we're focused, and someone just snaps us out of it, that's enough to kind of go, I don't even know what to focus on. What's going on.
Fascinating.
But when it comes to a real emergency of we need you, we need help, instantly I'm just focused, and I go, right, and I drop everything, and I'm just super calm, and I can see everything, and I go in there and I look around the room and I can see instantly what's needed and go, right, this, and it's fine. It's absolutely fine. And then afterwards I come away going, I don't even think about it.
So that speaks to almost another question that I had, which is, how does one bring themselves out of that back into the here and now, having to be available to a class of students? But I think you've just spoken to that, because if you're needed, you will be present and do what you need to do. And it's almost like you have to put, from what you've just described, it's almost like you put yourself on hold. I'll deal with myself later. I'll address my need later, as opposed to deal with myself. I'll address my need later. But right now I have to just function. That's absolutely fascinating. And we will speak further down the line to the support that could be helpful potentially for a teacher with a neurodiversity. There was one further thing that I wanted to mention, and it was in my mind as you were speaking, and then you spoke to it yourself, and it's about knowing what to do. And I was wondering, you had explained eventually that through a training that you'd attended, or an event you'd attended as a teacher, a light bulb went and you were able to go and have a discussion. Chain of events kicked on. But I suppose my thing is, how does somebody who thinks that they have a neurodiversity, how do they know what to do next? Now, of course, the simple answer there is there's ChatGPT, there's Google, but it seems from what you have said that you didn't know where to go and get a test, or that you might need a test. And also, I'm thinking, do people know what the cost of a test is? Do you know what the cost of a test is? Like, is that a costly process for another teacher listening to consider putting themselves through?
It is. I could have gone through the NHS route and be on the waiting list for however long it takes.
Right.
I know, for example, for ADHD, it's down in Devon, it's 6 or 7 months if you're lucky. If you're lucky. They're scaling back a lot on that one, so it might not be there. For dyslexia screening tests, it could be it's probably better worthwhile asking your school, because obviously I know every school has their SEN departments, and they go through the screening tests with their students all the time. So it might well be worth asking your department and saying, hey, is it possible I could get the screening test? Now, I went down the private route, which was expensive, and I was fully funded by myself, and I didn't necessarily ask my school to do anything with it, partly because for the cost of it, again, it might take a long time for me to get that. It's a low priority in regards to what schools are, what they need to function. So I went, well, I'll take the hit and I'll do it, because at least that way, when I pay for it, I'm in control. I decide when to take it. It's all within my control, so to speak. So it was costly for me, and it was an additional cost for the ADHD as well. So it's really a case of anyone who's thinking of it. It's a case of does the cost of proving or disproving what I think I already know, is it worth it, or do I just accept that I probably am, and it's not really having an impact on my life or my career? So I might just go and probably just go, yeah, I probably am X, Y, and Z. For me, I've just had that curiosity, and I just wanted to know.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you speak there to the fact that that's going to be an individual choice for a person. For what might need to be the case for one might be different for somebody else. So that's really good. But I think it's important for people to know that, there's a cost involved there. And if you wanted to find out, you'd have to research and maybe be willing to go on that waiting list, or maybe decide that actually, this is too much of a priority. So yeah, lots of personal choices there. I'm going to just pause. Thank you so much, Michael. This is really insightful. I'm going to just pause there for our next mention of a sponsor. So here we go. This is all about BET. If you join BET for the biggest week in education, from the 21st to the 23rd of January in 2026 in the Excel London, they have an immersive workshop, or multiple immersive workshops, thought-provoking speakers, hundreds of hours of CPD accredited content, cutting-edge technology, and unrivaled networking. And there's no opportunity quite like it for educators. So you can get a free ticket today by visiting uk.bet, that's BETT, uk.betshow.com. Okay, so I'd like to continue on by asking a little bit about what that diagnosis meant for yourself, Michael, and did it change how you view yourself personally or professionally? I think it's a hugely important question.
Yeah, it did. When I heard the news of both, it took me about a week to properly digest it and to almost come to terms with it. When I speak to a few other people who had the same, there is a sense of, I already knew, but that still doesn't take away a bit of the shock element of, oh, okay, this is what I have to play with now. Bit of sadness involved, because I look at it and go, oh, okay, well, I guess that's the way it is now, and I almost have to look at the way I go about my business and go, I have to take everything into consideration. I then look at a sense of regret. I look at all of the missed opportunities or all of the things, perhaps how life could have been different, how my academia could have been different. Had I had an earlier diagnosis, I would certainly have been afforded more opportunities to extend coursework deadlines for mitigating circumstances. So I kind of look at that and I go, well, I probably missed out on a few things on those. I look at professionally the impact of having that diagnosis and wondering, am I seen as maybe damaged goods? Would anyone want to potentially have me in their department, even though I could be a liability? Because even though if you put it on, applications and whatnot, some people might look at it. I know that they shouldn't discriminate, and it is against the law, but I can't but help kind of think to myself, if someone who goes for a job are they going to favor that person? Are they going to look at my diagnosis and go, well, how can we accommodate Michael's needs on this one? So there was a lot of thinking, a lot of soul searching when I had that diagnosis, and also it's out there. So I went, well, okay, I have this information now, and I'm just toying with it. Like, well, what do I do with it? I know. Do I make it known? Do I go public? Do I keep it to myself? Week went past, and I went, well, do you know what? I have it. I might as well share it, and I might as well start making it known to my people who I follow on LinkedIn and on my social medias. I might as well make it known to them that I have it, and maybe I could be of some help or support or assistance by me sharing it. It might help out with other people. And then I did that, and then I felt a little bit more okay with it all. And slowly but surely, I started to feel a little bit more comfortable with sharing the decision, and kind of working out now, not only the negatives, but kind of working out the positives of what dyslexia and ADHD have given me as a person, as a musician, as a teacher. Talking to loads of educators and musicians have been wonderful. I had a great chat with my head soon after I was diagnosed, because I wanted to kind of share that with him as an FYI. And we had a wonderful chat about it. And, he's saying to me, he's worked with many colleagues, SLT, heads of department and whatnot, who have neurodivergency. And it put me very much at ease, going, it's all right. It's not necessarily something that you should be ashamed of. He said it's a superpower. He said you've got two superpowers here, and if you can learn to harness all of these skills and different divergent thinking patterns that someone with ADHD and dyslexia has, you could make it even more. You could do so much more with it. Now you've got the knowledge, you can work at it and see where it takes you and what it gives you. And then, so right now I feel at peace with it, and I feel very much comfortable is the wrong word, but certainly I can live with it now, and I can kind of part of my personality. The one thing that I have issues with, but everybody who I speak to have this, is the fact that we feel like we have to say sorry for a lot of things. So, misreading of emails, or some organizational blips here and there, or not quite filing the right things in the right places and crossing the T's and dotting the I's, all of the things that make schools run and everything. I feel like I still need to kind of almost say it as a what do you call it? As a kind of an asterisk, saying, oh, by the way, if I mess up with that, sorry, it's just kind of who I am. So I still feel a little uncomfortable of trying to do things. And if I do make a mistake, that's something I probably need to learn to kind of go, it's all right. You didn't do it on purpose. You read the email and you spent 10 minutes reading it, and you probably missed out 40% of the information, but you spent 10 minutes reading it. So you can't not say you didn't skim it. You can't read properly. So go easy on yourself,
Well, yeah, I suppose so many things there. Once again, I would want to believe that you will get to a place where or an individual would get to a place where they understand themselves so well that they don't feel the need to be continually apologizing. Because again, as I mentioned before, the load on an individual to have to feel they've got to do that over multiple interactions through a day would be huge, and quite frankly unbearable, I would imagine. So hopefully you'll reach a place where you feel like, you know, the people that need to know have the information, and everybody else can perhaps just work it out. You know, do you know what I mean by that is, as we all function in the ecosystem of a school and know one another to whatever extent we know one another, know bits of information or have question marks about each other, and we all function, the place functions, the day goes through the motions and everything still continues, and we get to the end of another school day. I feel that yeah, the need to feel that you've got to be continually explaining yourself, hopefully that balances out.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that it's interesting but not surprising what your head teacher said, because I think in speaking to most people, you'll find out that somebody is connected not too far away to someone with a neurodivergence. So people often have a lot more empathy than might be expected. Just when you really talk to people and you really listen to what's going on in their lives. But it's that bit to even have that dialogue. It's that bit of sharing the information that you've got, that you now have. You've got your diagnosis now. So you have to be able to get there. You have to know, right? Initially. Really, really interesting information coming through. If I can ask you, you mentioned, we had a bit of a discussion about managing yourself and putting your needs to the side temporarily in the classroom. But as a teacher, has your diagnosis shifted the way you approach your classroom, your lesson planning, your interactions with students? Because it's so interesting. I think of adult to adult interactions, but before now, I've never really considered how children can be supportive of an adult with a neurodivergent diagnosis. So interesting.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I'll start with the relationship with my students. So I feel there's a kindredness with myself and the students who I know are SEN. And when they come into my class now, I really do go out of my way to let them know, A, I get it. B, don't need to apologize. And C, I'm the same as well. So it's all right. And I've found since my diagnosis, I've had maybe about 3 or 4 students who are warming up to me now and they're more engaged with my lessons. They're a lot more relaxed. They're a lot more jovial. They're more prone to have a laugh at my expense, which I always encourage in my lessons. And they're just becoming a lot more personable and, dare I say, probably themselves. And I put that down to just the little micro conversations that I have with students when they're either doing their work or in the groups, or, you know, this sense of it. I'm kind of letting them know that don't worry, relax. If they're just about on the cusp of being dysregulated, just catch them just before they do, and just kind of let them know that it's all right to feel how you feel. But also, I'm candid enough to share with classes as if I have a dyslexia moment, I'll stop and then I'll kind of gather myself and I say, "Oh, sorry, everyone. I just had a bit of a dyslexia wobble there." And even without students kind of acknowledging, they kind of, "Oh, okay, that's fine. I get it." And I think that speaks to a lot of my students, that they go, "Well, if Mr. Wright is neurodivergent, I'm neurodivergent, so maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe that's all right." So having that openness and allowing them to be how they want to be has opened up lots of changes. Another way that I'd use the guitar. Another way that I felt that it's changed my practice is how my students work with my lessons. And rather than correcting them for, say, mistakes, so to speak, I'll just move the camera a little bit down so you see the guitar. Rather than them correct themselves on their mistakes, I now embrace their differences and how they may not be reading the same way as other classmates will. So there's a song that I'm using on layering and looping with year nines, and it's got a 4-chord progression. And what I've done this term is I've taught students this particular 4 chords. So you've got A minor, D minor, F major, and then G major. So that's the chord progression. So students want either on piano or ukulele or guitar, just kind of been playing. They've been playing that, right? The students who I know are SEM, I've noticed that they look at the chord sheet, but they look at the chords in a different way. They don't go clockwise. They'll often look at the sheet and they will kind of make their own versions. So instead of A minor to D minor, F major to G major, they might go D minor, back to A minor, F major, back to G major. And you know what? They might forget what they've done, and then they might go F major, G major, A minor to D minor. Now the teacher in us would look at that and go, you're not doing what we're asking you to do on the sheet, right? So many subjects, that's the case. The sheet says it's this, and we're really working towards what's on the worksheet or what's on the book. And we need to get that right. Music and other arts are kind of different in a way, because we could look at something and maybe, well, I'll speak for myself here because I've got a bit of an improvisatory mindset anyway. You can look at a piece of music and go, well, yes, it says that, but there's nothing to say where we can't change up the formula. So now, instead of students not playing what's on the sheet and they play something different, I encourage it now, because I look at that as a form of improvisation, a form of embellishment and creativity. So I allow it. I go, brilliant. Can I hear that, your 4 chords, can I hear that at the end of everyone else's? So now I plan it into the lesson. So if they're doing group work with those chords, everyone will play those chords, and then I go, right, now it's your turn. And then they'll play the chords themselves and say, that's your solo. It works for me, and that's what I've been doing for the rest of my career in terms of music. I've just, because like I said, I have a really difficult time reading and sight reading, I've had to embellish and change things and almost justify it to say, look, I've got that, but I've done this. And it works. And I have seen students more receptive to my lessons because they have the freedom to experiment. They have the freedom to do something a bit different. They have the freedom to absorb the learning how they want to learn. Yes, it's not the same as everybody else, but it doesn't necessarily mean to say it's wrong. And from a musical standpoint, when you take those 4 chords and you rearrange them, you've got a brand new song, you've got a brand new arrangement. So you're really learning and developing skills as a composer, you're developing skills as a creative. You're not just playing under what's on the paper, you're going beyond what's on the paper, and you're creating something brilliant. So I think in terms of the diagnosis and how I go about lessons now, I do allow for my students who I know will struggle, I allow for them to interpret the music how they want to interpret. And then me as the teacher, I can look at that and I can make the assessments based upon the musicality of it. So does it sound good? Yes. Does it actually work with the song? Absolutely. For subjects like history, you can't necessarily remix the past, can you? You can't necessarily take the Battle of Hastings and then throw it with the Spanish Armada, and you can't really put the two together because it doesn't work, because history is set and the events are set. So from that perspective, I'd imagine that you would have to be kind of more prescribed on that. But there can be some wonderful moments when, if you allow the students who are neurodivergent, if you allow them to almost interpret how they see your lessons in their own way, you kind of give them a space of doing that and create boundaries and proper scaffolding to make sure that they don't veer off too far left or right, then I think there's some really magical moments of learning that can happen. And it's, you know, when we're teaching, we're imparting our knowledge, but we're not in control of what students learn. We can't be. So by allowing them to kind of absorb the information how they want to, as long as they are doing what you're asking them to do, where the basics of reading a text, analyzing, taking a composition and performing out the sports field, you know, playing in a position but sticking to whatever it is, as long as they're doing what you're asking of them in a very broader sense, then I think that's only a good thing.
Okay, so there's having an element of flexibility in the outcomes that the young people achieve. But then even within music, there are a bunch of rules, particularly if you're looking at, you know, Western classical tradition. There are a bunch of rules, not only in that, within, you know, jazz, you know, high levels of jazz, there are rules which some of us maybe are not privy to fully understanding of, because we're not jazz trained. So there are rules in all. It's not only those two subgenres, is it? It's also all music. There are elements, all elements of music. There are rules that exist. So yes to flexibility, but I can imagine as a teacher there have been times where you've faced challenges, tricky moments, which you may feel on reflection now with this diagnosis, oh my gosh, that's because of my neurodivergence. That's because of what I'm working with. So are there times when you can think of, you know, moments where you couldn't put the rules to the side and it's made things more difficult for you?
Yeah. Well, in my professional career, plenty. When you got a score and you're reading and you're following the same as the orchestra, or you're following the same as the ensemble, you can't go off piste. You have to stay with the dots, so to speak, because if you do, the whole piece is ruined. And you know, you've to coin a phrase which musicians use, you train wreck the gig, and then you don't want to be the person who basically has ruined all of the gig because you're like, no, I'm going to interpret it how I want to. It's like, no, here's the dots. You've got to play it like that, because if you don't, then the dancers are out of sync, then the singers are completely out of sync as well. So there have been moments, and you know, in my career, I haven't had too many of those. And when it comes to focus, like I've managed to switch on and find a way to learn the score, which I have done. So there are moments where you have to do that. In terms of school planning as well, I know certain schools have a certain way of doing things. The lesson plans need to be like this. The planning of lessons, the structure of the lessons need to be like this. You need to fit to a time, of course. You've got X amount of time. You know, you need to plan your lessons where you've got a quick and accessible plenary. You've got a development bit, which is kind of where the learning is, and starter bit. When you've got a starter at the beginning, make it short, make it snappy. You've got your middle bit, which you need to make sure the learning is there. The plenary needs to tie in, etc., etc. So there are, you know, things that I cannot fight against the system, and I'll need to make sure that I adhere to certain things. But for me, I do my best to stick to those, but I'm always looking at where can I twist things, where can I embellish for my sake, not to be iconoclastic or troublemaker for the sake of troublemaking. I look at things where I go, well, how can I bend and twist that to make it easier for me? Because if they want me to do this, I know it's going to take me a lot longer to think, to process, and it's going to be harder for me to do what they're asking, is because I can't operate in that prescribed way. I need to have a little bit of flexibility, just a little bit of brain flexibility or embellishment or improvisation, just to compensate for those moments where I'm on the cusp of being dysregulated, or I can't do it because of X, Y, and Z.
Does it feel, I'm just going to jump in and ask you, does it feel as though you've become more aware of that because you have the diagnosis, or have you been operating like that for some time in any case?
Oh, I've been operating like that for some time.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, my general philosophy of lesson planning and teaching is a bit like how I approach it as a jazz musician. I've got the lead sheet in front of me. I know the chords. I know the structure. I know when to come in, when to end. I kind of got a rough idea. But what happens in between those 16 and 32 bars really depends on who I'm working with, how they're feeling, how I'm feeling, and it will be what it will be. So in lessons, I have a structure, and I almost have a template where I can go, I'm going to do this, 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 this. But in my mind, I know I can embellish this, I can improvise on that. That can be a little bit longer, that can be a little bit shorter. Oh, wait, I've got those two students in there, so I really need to be mindful that I can't stop them from, interrupting. So I need to build that in. So in my mind, I'm kind of semi-improvising everything, even though someone would say, look at my lessons, and if I'm in full flow, they might look at it like, oh, Michael's just doing it off the cuff. It looks to me like he's doing it off the cuff, but I'm not. I'm purposefully leaving that headspace to just go and explore things where I need to, because A, I know myself well enough, but also B, I kind of like those moments or those lessons where we do go off a little bit, where I do get a question, or I'm explaining something and in my mind I go, of course I could talk about this. So I have a little, my process is a little bit more improvisatory. Kind of listening to other teachers, I know that's not, even music teachers, I know that's not the norm. A lot of teachers have minute by minute prescribed, and this is how I was taught in PGC. You got to do this, 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 this. Scripted, structured. Hey, it's whatever works. If it works for people, that's absolutely fine. But I certainly wouldn't want to feel that my approach, my pedagogy, and my approach is lesser than anyone else's just because I haven't taken the time to plan everything to the 9th degree, because I struggle with following that. I wouldn't want to go in and be observed and go, well, Michael didn't plan a very good lesson because in his plan he didn't talk about this, he didn't take into consideration this. My response would be, I'm proactive in my reactivity. I anticipate that things will happen. So
well, I think the thing is there though, it's so helpful what you're saying anyway, when you're thinking about the fact that the large majority of us have such diverse classrooms now, with the increase which we keep hearing in the media recently. But for any parent, with a neurodivergent child, for instance, they'll be aware of what's going on, and the experience their child may be having in a classroom. This is really, really helpful for people who are working with very diverse mixes of students in their classroom, because whilst, yes, the training may be work to a plan, and we know that's because people need to learn to get through the pace of a lesson, actually in reality, there has to be an element of flexibility, so that if you have a child who has a neurodivergence, the whole lesson doesn't have to be derailed because you're sticking to your goal of just getting through it. Actually, just having a moment to allow the lesson to take a different direction to accommodate those needs is not a bad thing. So I think it's really helpful for people listening to hear what you're saying, because yes, you want to be able to do things to schedule and stick to the plan, but at the same time, an element of flexibility, I would say, is essential. Actually, I wouldn't even say that it's optional, not in 2025.
There's a saying that stuck with me. I heard it it was last inset last year. Connect, then correct. And there was a guest speaker came in my school who spoke about behavior management, and he was specifically talking about students who are dysregulated or students who act out as a result of their own frustrations of not being able to access the lesson. And it's a wonderful saying. What he meant by that is that before you correct, before you reprimand, connect first. Just in your mindset, find out why they're doing it, and then you correct. As opposed to going, right, this is the third time you've you've shouted out in the classroom, out you go. But that student who shouted out, probably because they're hyper and they can't control it for some other reason, or maybe they just want attention, but they don't know how to, get it in the right way. Now, what I'm saying here is that I'm not necessarily saying that everyone should basically allow every SEN student to do what they want, because
no, of course not.
And it'll be, like you reprimand and you sanction where needed based upon the rules of the classroom and the rules of the school. No matter whether you have SEN or not, you must adhere to the foundations and the functionality of behavior management and making sure that the values and ethics are there. But if we're talking about creating those connections with students and those ones who already are feeling like it's me against the world, or I really can't access school because I know that I'm different, that connect then correct philosophy I think is absolutely wonderful, because you're really taking the time to get to know the student and you're understanding how they are learning and dealing with their own neurodiversity and how they're trying their best to navigate themselves into a school system and the school structure where they can't do it the best of times because they don't operate in the same way. So that connect then correct aspect for SEN students I think is absolutely wonderful, and I think it's going to be it'll be the difference between you creating a really good relationship with your students or you alienating your students or making behavior worse. If you find the time just to kind of understand why, you don't necessarily condone and say I agree with it, but if you can find an idea why they're doing it, then that way you're building trust. You're building trust with the student, and then that way they can go into your lesson, they can feel relaxed and go, okay, I don't have to be so on guard, sir or miss gets it. Sometimes I will have to walk around the room. Sometimes I will have a fidget toy. Sometimes I will get this text and I can't read it, or have to spend a longer reading it because I'm trying to process it, even though it's all been spaced out and made more legible. It means that the world to students who have felt unheard. And I'm speaking for myself as well. If I had something like that with my colleagues where I had that same philosophy, it just goes a long way for me. It just shows that people care enough to think about that. And again, going back to that process or that mentality I have is when I have to prove people wrong, when someone does understand, then it's the same works. I'll run through brick rules with people. If I know that they understand my needs and I'm really trying my best and they're saying, hey, look, Michael, we get it. It's good. You do you and it's fine. If you give me 2, I will give you 8.
Yeah, you'll flourish. Absolutely.
That's the way I've always been wired in that sense,
So on that point of flourishing, it links really nicely to our next message from our sponsor, which is indeed actually Teachers Talk Radio. So Teachers Talk Connect is back. It's our annual CPD and networking extravaganza. So you can join the Teachers Talk Radio team on Saturday, the 14th of March in Manchester. The tickets are free. What are you waiting for? Head over to ttradio.org/connect 2026. Okay, so we're talking about flourishing and to support other teachers, and we cannot end this episode without speaking to other teachers, other educators who suspect they may be neurodivergent but haven't yet sought a diagnosis. What would you say? And of course, you mentioned this earlier, Michael, there's no one size suits all, but what would you recommend? What would you suggest that they take as their next steps?
Okay. First thing, work out, is a potential diagnosis, is it going to be of use or of benefit to your life or your career? If you suspect that you have a neurodiversity, you're on the spectrum, but life is going okay and work's going okay and family's going okay, and to be honest with you, it makes no difference if I've got X, Y, and Z, then I wouldn't even bother about it. If you have this concern, interest, if it's a nagging feeling that I just want to know, I would say contact your SEN department at school. If they can't do a screening test, they will absolutely be connected with people who will. So the lady who connected me to the person who did my dyslexia and ADHD screening, she works in in York in the SEN provision there. So she's well connected, and she recommended someone. So if the schools can't help, they're going to know someone who will. They're going to know a friend or a colleague who does private screenings. It's worth asking the school to say, hey, look, I'm thinking of doing this. I'm thinking of getting screening for whatever it is. Could the school part fund, fully fund? The worst you're going to get is no, sorry. Or you'll get, hey, look, we'll contribute a couple of £100 for our CPD budget, because it's important for you and you're working out of school, so it's important for that. So, excuse me. So I would do that. I just wouldn't let it, like, if you got this feeling that I really think I should, or I'm really concerned about it, then I would get it done as soon as possible. It's an important decision to make, because you need to also be prepared for the outcomes. It could be that you feel like you have a neurodiversity, but then the screening comes back as negative, or it doesn't have that. Then you equally need to consider those outcomes compared to those outcomes which show that you have it. So there's a case of,
that's a great point.
Am I prepared? What am I prepared? Am I prepared to have the diagnosis or not have the diagnosis? And so there are other considerations that you need to think of as well.
Yeah, that's a very helpful point to put out there, actually, I think, because as with anything, if you've built up so much in your mind that you think it's going to be X answer, X outcome, what do you then do when you find out that it's not that? So that's something definitely for people to take away and consider. We're not done yet, Michael. There's a couple more things I want to just mention with you and talk to you about, but there is one final message from our sponsor, which I'm just going to mention now. So this show is brought to you in partnership with Hatchet Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. You can level up your professional development today and visit www.hatchetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles. Okay, and the last thing that I'd love to just give you the opportunity to give us like 3 bullet points on, a little bit of a controversial one, I suppose. The UK education system, are we equipped to understand and support neurodivergent teachers, as well as all the great work that goes on to support neurodivergent pupils?
No.
Okay, tell us more.
We're not. We're not, because all of our resources, our time resource, our financial resources, our energy resources are given to students, and rightly so. That's our job. We turn up for students. We turn up for our community. So we give everything to our students and our community, and we don't have anything else to give to us. So I will say no, because our resources are stretched. As much as it sounds harsh in a way, but I think for those, in order to support our colleagues, we've got to set aside a little bit for us and for others as well. I think teachers are a caring bunch anyway. So if there's colleagues who are struggling, and you're close to them, you're gonna want to help them out. How it's fixed, I think it just comes down to further funding and just further, staff and retention, which needs to be kind of put into the schools. Having said all that, though, I think, again, part of the CPD, you could reasonably go in and make the case for asking about getting screened or getting tested. But, when you're working so hard as we all are, finding the time and the headspace to do that is going to be difficult. So I would say, again, if it becomes an urgent factor in your oneself to to ask the question, then do so. But yeah, I don't think we're in a position where we can help out neurodivergent teachers, and I don't mean that in a harsh way. I just mean that as the reality is that we're not, because it would require a lot more effort to understand our colleagues in terms of what they're going through, and also a lot of patience as well. You know, you have to
Absolutely.
You're really asking, you know, am I willing to help my colleague who I know is struggling and is going to be struggling with this, because that means I'm going to have to do extra for a period of time. It does sound selfish to say, but it's the truth. But this is where I think compassion and empathy and understanding come into it. And as long as the teacher isn't taking the mickey in terms of what they're asked to do and don't do it, as long as they are doing it and they can have that, like you said earlier on, Jen, just that idea of, we got you, don't worry.
Yeah.
That if anything can right a lot of wrongs in terms of neurodivergent teachers who need help. So if they can get that compassion and support and they feel heard, they feel understood, that will, speaking from my experience, that will solve many problems.
Okay.
You're not really fighting under that, you know.
So I am going to have to stop you there, Michael. I'm so sorry, but just to say, it sounds like key message there is it's going to take a made up mind to decide that you're going to go and seek a diagnosis. And the message that I love us to end on there, I love the fact that we can end on, is compassionate support for teachers who are neurodivergent. So we will have to end, we've reached the end of our show, but more to discuss in the future. Michael, does this mean I'm wishing you a happy festive season?
It certainly
and I'll
does.
see you next in January.
It does. And I just want to say, bravo, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jen. Amazing. And for those who are listening, we really hope this has been insightful. We're going to add this, of course, onto our Podbean and YouTube channels so that it can be listened to later on. So thank you so much for tuning in. And you're quite right, Jen, this is our last show of 2025. So yeah, on behalf of us, and there'll be other Teachers Talk radio shows, but certainly on behalf of us, we're wishing you a lovely Christmas and a new year, and we'll see you back not long after the start of January for new shows for 2026. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael.
See you later, everyone.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.